Hello and welcome to the very first session of Forbes India Disrupting the Discourse. COVID-19 has dealt a huge blow to the economy, and this was expected across the globe as countries went under stringent lockdowns. However, India's economy was struggling even before the pandemic, and the outbreak just sort of made it worse. So today, on International Women's Day, we speak to four out of the many Indian women entrepreneurs and leaders who successfully steered their businesses amongst and amid the pandemic about what the country needs to get back on the growth path. Please join me in welcoming Harpreet A.D. Singh, the CEO of Alliance Air, also India's first woman airline CEO, Revati Roy, the founder of Hey Didi, a pioneer of Asia's first women's cab service, Pranjal Bhandari, Chief India Economist, HSBC, Dr. Shama Fernandez, who is the Managing Director and CEO of Northern Arc Capital, a leading debt platform that focuses on the underbanked in India. First of all, wishing all of you a very happy Women's Day, and thank you all for joining us today. Let's get started and let's get right to it. I'll start with Shama. In your opinion, what are the potential growth drivers that India can capitalize on, towards its route to recovery?
That's right. So, as you mentioned, Northern Arc does a lot of work in the underbanked space, and in some sense, I think what really happened during the entire COVID lockdown period was a severe impact on the most vulnerable of the population of India, and we all know what that was, and it was quite a nightmare. I think, in some sense, we have seen the worst, and fingers crossed. I think things will get better as we move forward. But I think that this really is now the time to up the efforts that we put in, particularly bringing up some of these sectors, some of these really high impact, high growth rate sectors as far as the Indian economy is concerned. I'm basically talking about the tier 3, tier 4 geographies. I'm talking about the classic underlying population of India. I think two things are largely required. I think there is going to be an additional requirement for capital into the spaces. We are going to have investors take on even more ambitious, promising, aggressive positions as far as lending as well as equity is concerned in these spaces. And secondly, I do think that we will need to, in some sense, reinvent our ability to take risk, because things have changed. It's a different world right now. And I would say, we were on the growth trajectory. Right now, we are a little under zero in some sense. And to really come back on the path is going to require a lot more effort than we would require under normal circumstances. So that's really what I would say. A lot of capital requirements, a different sense of risk-taking capacity as far as the economy is concerned.
Right. Pranjal, coming to you, let's take a step back. And if you can sort of take us through how bad has this blow really been, not just for the Indian economy, but for economies across the globe. And, it's literally been a year. I mean, it's March 2021. Over the past 1 year, how have things changed?
Well, yes, look, things have changed quite dramatically. In a very superficial sense, it's just a scratch. There was a lockdown, economic activity slowed, a lot of people lost their jobs, some people lost their, had to take big wage cuts, some people had to lose big assets, but there were also many scars. And my sense is that we haven't really seen all the scars yet, and they will only show up over time. And in particular, there are three scars that I worry about. Number one, scars in the banking sector. We know that bad loans in banks don't really rise in the year of the slowdown, because in the year of the slowdown, there can be a lot of emergency steps, regulatory easing, all of that can happen. It always shows up 1 or 2 years down the line. So we haven't seen all the stress in the banks yet. The second scar is inequality. The fact that large firms have gained at the cost of small firms, the formal sector has gained at the cost of informal sector, and there is very good data to back that. I think that can weigh on demand over the next couple of, in the next period. And the third scar that I worry about is, inflation. The fact that there has been unprecedented easing from central banks and governments from around the world, these are classic cases of stoking financial bubbles. And there could be inflation, that all kinds of inflation that we can see right now. We're seeing commodity prices going up, but there can be different kinds of reactions. We don't know. These are unprecedented territories where we have treaded. So there will be some scars, and we'll all have to be very careful as we navigate through the next couple of quarters or even years. One last thing, things are looking very good now because there's a huge amount of pent-up demand for goods, pent-up demand for services. But by definition, pent-up is a one-time. When it goes away, then I think we'll start seeing some of the scars. And I just sort of, wanted to warn you of some of the scars that we could see perhaps in 2021 or early 2022.
Yeah, definitely. And can you tell us some of these sectors which are kind of picking up, like you mentioned earlier, if you can take us through a couple of those?
Yeah, so look, the economic rebound after the lockdown has been extremely impressive and strong in India. And a lot of it, in our view, is driven by pent-up goods demand. So, if you look at all kinds of goods producers, consumer durables, consumer non-durables, they all have done very well. In fact, some of them are even better than pre-pandemic levels. Where we haven't yet done very well is services demand, and particularly high-touch services, because of the nature of the pandemic. And our own sense is that we're about 25% below normal if you look at services together. But as the vaccination rollout happens, hopefully the current surge that we are seeing in new cases dies out. It's an area to watch, but I'm hoping it dies out. Then perhaps people will get more confidence to consume these services, and that could normalize as well. But right now we are seeing a huge distinction between goods and services.
Right. Harpreet, coming to you, obviously a lot has happened in the last year, especially, aviation, which has taken a massive, massive hit. Talk us about some of these growth drivers that are now sort of growth draggers. I mean, essentially what worked, say, a year back and is potentially not likely to work in the coming future.
Yes, thank you and for this opportunity. And I would just like to share with you, yes, aviation has been one of the industries which has been drastically hit with COVID. As you're aware, with the lockdown, all flights stopped. I mean, I don't even think you can imagine that such a thing could have happened. Historically, to see that every flight all over the world, no flights at all, no transportation available for people to go from A to B. And this is a huge, huge challenge. And we are slowly coming back. And if you see, even as Alliance Air, because right now I can talk about Alliance Air since I'm heading that, we have come back from post-COVID, which I will not say is totally gone yet. I mean, we're just on a slow and steady increase. We have operated our 46th station today. In fact, on International Women's Day, I'm proud to say that we did an all-women flight, with women pilots and women cabin crew, women engineers, etc. And it was our inaugural flight. So we, on International Women's Day, why I wanted to share this is we also believe in women empowerment. But coming back to your question, definitely we are slowly and steadily from October, November onwards of last year, we have been coming back to our stations, coming back. But your question also said, what change do we expect? Yes, the big change is if you've traveled by air, the kind of different safety standards that we have to maintain now. And I was the past safety head in Air India, our mother carrier. And I remember every aspect, like the deep cleaning of the aircraft, the sanitization of the cockpit. Passengers see what they see day to day, wearing the visors and, the mask, the sanitization. It has changed the whole safety standards. The requirements have modified. So even for the passengers, at times it can be a little irritating for them. But I think this is something we just have to live with till we are comfortable with the COVID situation. So, but I can see the confidence build up because the airlines have really gone out of the way to build that passenger confidence. They have really done so many additional steps to make them feel secure. And even little things like catering was not there on board, or it is only served in boxes. The cabin crew are wearing, from top to bottom, they're fully covered, and the kind of sanitization checks and the kind of processes behind the scene to monitor that safety standards are not compromised is the new challenge. It has also encouraged new processes. For instance, web check-in for passengers have become more popular now. Earlier, people used to hesitate to do web check-ins, but now you see 80%, 90% are doing web check-ins, least amount of interface or contact with people. So I think it has changed the entire way of doing things. So we are slowly and steadily coming back, but yes, it will take some time.
Definitely. Revati, coming to you, in your opinion, we'll get to, how sort of KDD and the business took a hit in a little while. But going forward, what are some of the factors that India should avoid focusing on? And like I asked Harpreet as well, some things that kind of worked a year back and are potentially not likely to work in the coming future.
So I think, I would divide this into two things.
Sure.
The thing that actually did not affect us, in fact, we did extremely well during the COVID.
Okay.
Because we were in the essential services. We got categorized in essential services because HDD is a last mile delivery service.
Right.
And we were closed only for 2 days, which was March 23rd and 24th. In fact, we became the frontline runners for doing all the work. But yes, as far as disruption is concerned, what did affect us very badly was the fact that most of our, I don't know how many of you know, I run an all-women logistics company, which does last mile delivery on 2-wheelers and 4-wheelers. So what happened with us was, while we continued to work as a company, but the number of red zone areas that were there, declared red zone areas, and our girls were living in those areas, our volumes came down. Our volumes in terms of number of girls came down, but our volume in number of parcels went up. And it was insane it was insane the way it went up, because it was absolutely insane the way it went up, because if there were 100 parcels which were given to me today, I was completing that in half the time than what I used to do earlier. So I think, as a business, we didn't stop. We never stopped. We were one of those businesses which never stopped. In fact, we grew exponentially. In terms of volume, we grew exponentially. So, and your question about what is it that India needs to, where are we heading? What are we doing? If I was in passenger movement, like Alliance said, or anybody, if you're in passenger movement, I was dead. It was all over. But I was in a segment where it was all about services. And I cannot tell you how proud I am of every girl of mine who just came out and said, we will do the job. It was not so. I always call my girls, they're warriors, because it was not just the doctors and nurses and, everybody was doing the job. It was my girls who were on the road. And they did an absolutely phenomenal job.
And going forward, any factors that, as an economy, India should possibly not focus on?
Oh, no, I think every economy is here to grow. I don't think there's anything that we will not grow on. It's just, I think it's a huge, huge, huge challenge for businesses which have shut down. But I think, I'm sure there are loads and loads of opportunities which are going to come up now. And I think we have to just look forward to those opportunities.
Definitely. Shama, coming back to you, how important and necessary is this, build back better from the pandemic?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's that's a great question. What we're seeing today really is a completely new spurt in entrepreneurship. And Northern Arc has underlying portfolio across pretty much all the states and union territories in India, and we have this, in some sense, bird's eye view of what one is seeing at the bottom of the pyramid. And this is a completely unprecedented spurt in entrepreneurship that we are seeing. And in some ways, it's very clear. We've seen this in kind of more formal companies where you have people who've decided to leave their jobs and start new things in life and look at the new opportunities and looking at newer ways to really generate livelihoods and so on in our circles. But this is really something one is seeing at the bottom of the pyramid, and this is sort of a movement of sorts that's coming up. I was last week on the field in some of the sort of rural parts of India where we do some of our work. And absolutely amazing how many new enterprises are taking shape. So while on the one hand, we do see that there are a lot of businesses that have shut down, and it's really out there, it's so loud and clear. But really what I see as emerging is really these many, many new entrepreneurship opportunities, and which is really the point I was making initially. This is almost like a reset of the normal equilibrium, which means that we are going to see new people coming in, trying to do new things, new business models. We are going to see a spurt in innovation, a lot more pioneering type of entrepreneurship models that will come up. And again, all of those will need capital, all of those will need some level of risk taking, and I think that's going to be the new paradigm. So while we sort of settle in, no need to do anything in a hurry, but really this is what I'm seeing emerging. I'm seeing India coming back again with a big bang as far as entrepreneurship is concerned.
Definitely hoping for that. Moving on from that to a slightly grimish topic, which is that of unemployment, which I suppose in April 2020 was as high as 23.52%, and around Feb 2021 it's come down to 6.9% as per data from CMIE. Pranjal, of course, we've all gone through a very terrible phase, but looking at a more positive, in a more positive definition, when you're talking about creating the next million jobs, how do you think that can be done rapidly, in your opinion?
Yeah. Look, I'm going to try to break this into two parts.
Sure.
Some of the things that we messed up in the last decade, how can we ensure we don't mess it up in the next decade? And the second part is, how can we do new things for the next decade? Now, the first part, which is like what we actually got wrong for the last 10 years. India had this big, what I call the twin balance sheet problem, which we first sort of noticed about 10 years ago, and it never really was corrected. The fact that there was too much debt in the books of corporates, there were too many non-performing loans in the books of banks, and what happened was these banks became extremely risk averse. They didn't want to give out too many loans. Corporates didn't want to take on more debt, and what really suffered was investment. For 10 years, we saw India's investment rate actually gradually come down, not sharply, but gradually, but still it was coming down. And investment, in my view, is basically an economy's capacity of creating new jobs. And once investment is sliding, then you don't really see jobs. And we saw that over a 10-year period, job growth had not really increased the way we had wanted. Wage growth had not increased the way we had wanted. And that is one problem that needs to be fixed. Anything that can take care of stress in India's banks will be extremely helpful. What we have now with us a few years ago is this amazing insolvency and bankruptcy code, which is very promising, which can take care of stressed assets, resolve them, take out locked money from some sectors, put it in other sectors which are working very well. We need to expedite it, bring it back into play. It has been suspended for a few months during the pandemic, but we need to bring it back into play. And we also need to increase its capacity, ensure that things move more quickly. It has all the resources that are needed, and so on and so forth. So that is one way in which you will increase investment and therefore the economy's capacity to create jobs. The other is to hone what India is great at. India's entrepreneurial spirit, which Ms. Fernandez also spoke about, but a lot of it gets clamped down because of ease of doing problems. The fact that regulation is just too much in India. We really need to bring down this whole regulatory cholesterol, which a lot of people call it. So that's an ongoing reform process. We need to persevere on with it to ensure that all of this entrepreneurial spirit can actually lead to ventures, can actually lead to jobs, can actually lead to wages. I think that is very important. And finally, social welfare schemes. In an economy when there's a lot of churn, at a time when there's a lot of churn, there'll be a lot of people who will not have jobs for some time in the middle, as they are moving from one sector to another. There should be some solid social welfare scheme that we can have. I think we've done pretty well in rural India, where we've got things like Narega, PM Kisan, but we still don't have very good social welfare schemes in urban India. And I think that will also be very important as a hand holder as people try to get more jobs. But these are a few things I had in mind.
Sure. A lot more women have lost jobs due to the pandemic, if you were to compare it with men, of course. So Revati, As a founder of Hey Didi, tell us how important is it to bring back women to the workforce, and how can business leaders across sectors, do that and sort of get inspired by what you've done even along them?
So I think, the problems are not about just jobs being available. I think there are jobs. We there are a lot of times when we keep blaming the corporates, we keep blaming companies, saying that there is not enough inclusion, there's not enough diversity, and we say the people they are not giving enough jobs. But trust me, even today, I of course deal with the lowest end of the pyramid. I can very confidently say that today, as we talk, I can offer about 5,000 jobs in
Wow.
as many cities as possible. I can actually offer 5,000 jobs. But the woman also, barring there are a lot of social restrictions, there are a lot of societal problems, a lot of problems. I'm not saying there are no problems, but a woman also has to start thinking that she is a primary breadwinner. I think there is a fundamental problem in the thought process itself, at least with the girls that I work with, because they feel, Abhi, I'm going on a job, I'm going because, I can do that job for a few hours. The minute that
Mindset.
concept itself, mindset goes, I think a lot of things will automatically open up. And we have a very tough time, mentally mentoring them on the fact that you can actually earn much more, or you can earn equal to your husband, and you can contribute to your families. So I deal with a very different kind of set of women across, because I'm doing the unskilled, I'm doing the not so educated. So we have a little different set of problems. But yes, I mean, during the pandemic, a lot of them they didn't lose jobs, but they couldn't come out. The problem was that they couldn't come out of their homes. But now that they have come out, I think our jobs are becoming available to them, and we are very happy to provide jobs to anybody who's coming to us, who meets the basic skill sets that we need.
And Harpreet, for you, as India's first woman airline CEO, tell us, why do we need more women in the workforce and in leadership positions? I mean, all of us sitting here are examples, but we need more.
So I am definitely dealing with women at all different levels of education and skill sets, because in an airline, when you look at jobs for women, they are from all categories, starting from administrative to finance to commercial to HR to our ground handling, which gets a little work on the ramp on the field. Then we talk about security, then we talk about operations. You have pilots, cabin crew, engineering. So when you look at all these kind of multifaceted job, requirements, the door is open actually to lots and lots of women who can take up these responsibilities. And today, there was a time where we did not have enough women in these so-called male-dominated streams like pilots and engineers. But today, I can proudly say that India, in fact, has the largest percentage of women pilots in the whole in the airline. And a lot of that credit goes to a charitable trust called IWPA, Indian Women Pilots Association, and International Women Professionals in Aviation and Aerospace. Right now, I'm the president of that, because the kind of mentoring and guidance that we have given to women of economically backward areas, and also those that had these social pressures. It's also an expensive job for training point of view. So these kind of encouragement, I feel women can help women. Like we have to make 50 more, each woman has to make 50 more like you. If you've reached a certain point of qualification and position, you have to help your sisters. You have to help them to come forward. And in aviation, there's a large spectrum where I feel most women are not even aware that they can take up these kind of job functions. Like, simple things like even the safety department, the quality department, the auditing department, the ground handling, the ramp, and the coordination with planning and commercial. The scope is wide open. And talking about women leading from the front, of course, we need more women, because women are naturally blessed with EQ. I'm not saying that men don't have it, but let's be fair. We are equal, yes, in every way, but we are different. We are biologically different. So what happens is there's certain natural attributes which women have. So when you use the empathy and you use the teamwork, the connection, women can do a marvelous job in the airline industry, so it's really, really important. And I always add, along with IQ, a terrific EQ and a PSQ, core soul quotient. You just do things purely, sincerely, dil se karo, like what we say. I'm sure you can work as a good team and make any organization shine, and the range in aviation is right from the total unskilled to the complete high skill kind of functions of a pilot or engineer. So I would say that yes, the doors are open, and we in Alliance Air definitely welcome more and more women to join.
Right. And Shama, can you give us an anecdote that suggests that women are more effective leaders in a crisis like COVID, and why do you think that is?
That's a tough question. I mean, if you will permit me, rather than giving an anecdote about whether women are or are not better, I just want to draw attention on some of the numbers. And this is really data that has been put together by institutions that have spent a lot of effort to understand what's happening in terms of the gender equilibrium, bias, and so on and so forth in across the world. And let me just share some data with you. So basically, India, in terms of just the what one would call the gender gap index, ranks 112 in the world. So I'm glad to hear, the data that we just heard from Alliance Air, and I'm sure there are sectors where women really are sort of contributing a lot and are very, very sort of empowered. But that's the number. I mean, that's really where we stand as a country, 112th in the world in terms of gender gap. I mean, look at that. I mean, surely that we can do much better. And I think one of the ways to do this is really to recognize that a lot really needs to be done. I think I worry a lot about us settling in a zone of comfort, because think about it, right? Empowered women tend to meet more empowered women. I mean, it just sometimes sets you in the zone of comfort to think, oh my God, I'm seeing so many women around me and such brilliant women. They are doing so well and things are just changing. Of course they are changing. It was so much worse 10 years ago, so much worse 30 years ago. But 112, no, that's not good enough. I think we have a lot more to do. And I think lots of research and lots of data really suggests that women can make a difference. So there is clearly research, documented evidence that shows that boards that have women on them tend to generate more higher ROEs. Now, how's that for a change? And that's data. That's really what the data is telling. And there's so much more that the data is talking about, the quality of businesses that really result with women having a role to play, whatever that role may be. And so I think we really need to look at all of this and come to the conclusion that the real big change we can make is by just bringing more women in the room, whether it's in boardrooms, whether it is in companies, at all levels. We need a lot more women. We should absolutely not be happy with what we have today. And I think every effort in that direction is really going to make a big difference. Let me just conclude by sharing data in my universe, okay? And I'm only talking about the lending industry. I don't have data across the world. It is very clear that women make better credit than men. And the numbers across the world show that NPAs defaults for men, or basically portfolio that is driven by men, is 4.2%. And for women, it is 2.9. I can share the data. This is really, really statistics. And it's really saying something. And, Northern Arc works extensively in the microfinance MSME space, and absolutely stunning data coming in terms of repayments from women. So let me rest my case there. I really think we have a very, very long journey to go. I'd love to be in a position to say India ranks number 12 on the gender gap index and not 112.
Definitely. On that positive note, Pranjal, any anecdotes that you'd like to share that suggest that, sort of women are better leaders, and why is it that we need more empathetic leaders, if at all?
Yeah, so look, great anecdotes shared already. One which sort of caught my attention was this study recently done on the states in the United States of America. And those states that had more women leadership actually had much better health outcomes through the entire pandemic, in terms of death rate and so on. They were sort of did much better. So look, there is something going on there, so I think, another anecdote that sort of is a part of that whole pile. But taking a step back, what we find is that crisis-like situations have really increased in the world. We had the 2008 global financial crisis, we had the 2012-13 European debt crisis, we've had this whole pandemic. Crises are happening far more frequently right now, and and also a lot of other changes are happening. Digitization, artificial intelligence, policy making is changing quite a lot. So when there's so much of volatility, people become very insecure. And I think one of the greatest attributes we now need in corporate India or corporates anywhere around the world is more empathetic leaders. Leaders who actually talk to their staff, understand their insecurities, understand their vulnerabilities, because life is becoming much more vulnerable. If you have a crisis every couple of years, and because I think women do well, when it comes to empathy, listening, giving confidence that you're being listened to, we're going to do something about it. I think there is a great case for more women in leadership. I think that diversity is much welcome in the world we live in.
Definitely. Revati, coming to you, we spoke about women leaders. As a women leader yourself, dealing with a position like this in such a crisis where you said that you were, I mean, your employees were sort of last mile delivery people and women in those times. How did you deal with it? I mean, what kind of challenges did you face?
See, when the lockdown happened, nobody knew what was happening. I mean, we were all stunned. We didn't know whether tomorrow was a better day. We didn't know anything. But then when we realized that, I sitting in a red zone area, I was wondering, what do I do where I can actually go out and help? When actually my company can become a front runner and do something. So as a leader, I decided that, if I can do it, probably a lot of my girls can follow me. So we were given an opportunity by somebody to actually go and deliver food, lunch boxes every single day. And from day 3 of the lockdown, we actually started delivering 10,000 lunch boxes every single day to labor. And it was my girls who just come forward, and the 2 days I went also. I mean, not me only, but along with my girls, I also went. I drove one of the vehicles. But post that, my girls started telling me, "Ma'am, आप घर में बैठो, हम लोग सब जाएंगे." And I think it was, as a leader, I felt that it was a good move to do. And I didn't do it because I just, felt that they should follow me, and that's why I should do it. I did it because I really felt like doing it. But it did help. It did help in getting my girls out. And they said, "Ma'am, आप तो," I remember them telling me, they said, "Ma'am, आप घर में बैठो, आप senior citizen हो, आप घर में बैठो, हम लोग कर लेंगे."
Wow.
So, it was, and I think if you set an example, and I had an opportunity of setting an example, not everybody can come out and do this. But my business was such that I could do it. And I think that hand holding them at such a time, when I said, "Look, I'm also there, you can also do it, and it's a noble cause. Let's all take care and let's do whatever best we can." And we survived the COVID. All of us survived the COVID.
Great. I think coming to the last question, which I'll ask all of you, starting with you, Harpreet, if you can tell us, as a leader in the pandemic, what would your takeaway be? Harpreet, I think you're on mute. I don't think we can still hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you're back.
Yes. So this crisis really brought out the leadership qualities in each one of the employees, to be honest. Just like the previous speaker said, during the COVID, although we were not operating regular flights, the scheduled operation, but the number of evacuations that we did with our Vande Bharat flights, we were going to totally new stations. And I remember me and myself and my team, we were all at work within 3 days after the lockdown. And though we didn't have regular operation, we were all working continuously. And I think what happens is that when you're doing it for a good cause, you're helping the nation, you're helping people who are stuck all over the world. Even today, when we have to, move vaccines to very remote locations, Whether it's cargo, whether it is the front line, everybody's there. And I think as good leaders, we have to encourage leadership qualities amongst your officers and staff. Because what happens is when they watch you, they also feel the same desire. And I kept telling them, apni team ko motivate karo and fearful mat raho. Because when you live in fear, you will never do anything. I'm not saying you should not take precautions. You should wear your mask. You should sanitize. You cannot live in fear. It's a mindset. You can win COVID in your head. Okay, you just need to plan it correctly. You need to do the safety risk mitigation and go there, because you are going to have crisis after crisis. You can't be hiding in your home all the time. You have to go out and help, and you have to have the courage and the spirit to do it. So this kind of leadership quality where you lead from the front and all your managers also lead from the front. So then automatically the whole team makes it happen. I don't know how many passengers we must have evacuated from all over the world, both from India and, who were stuck outside just because of the team spirit. And of course, under the guidance of our government of India. Thank you.
Pranjal, what about you? How do you think, one can sort of bring back women into the workforce?
Well, look, there's a long list of things that can be done, but I think broadly speaking, address the derailers that women face, in terms of mobility, getting from one place to another, or in terms of, also mobility from one phase of life to another, returning to workforce after going on maternity leave, things like that. Then also working on soft skills. A lot of times you have women who work, extremely hard, but they're not able to actually promote their work, to publicize their work, to get their work known, and therefore, they feel the glass ceiling more so, than men do. Addressing all of that. Sometimes access to finance, the fact that many times women find themselves not being financially independent for many reasons. So I think these are some of the derailers, and I don't think it's anything new, after the pandemic. I think it's all the derailers that they have been facing through time, built up over time, that has to be continuously addressed, and that's the only way we can sustainably have women back into the workforce.
Definitely. Shama, what about you? In your opinion, since you work with a lot of startups, tell us, how is it that you sort of, how can you sort of bring back women into the workforce? Shama, I think you're on mute as well.
From your end. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So no, I think there are a few things we need to do. I think firstly, we do need to motivate women. We do need to gently bring them back into the workforce, do what it takes to sort of make this smoother, enable it for them. That's one part of it. The other part of it is really motivate organizations, get organizations to see the sense in having more women in workplaces. And there is enough, tons of, data across economic studies, sociology, and all of that. And I think that really needs to be put up and said, hey, look at this. This is what, science is telling us. Let's act on it. I think that's the second thing. I think the third most important thing is we absolutely need to have regulation in place today that requires more women than less to be present at workplaces, and we did try to do that in India in some shape or form. I'm sure we haven't achieved a lot. We have a long distance to go, but I think listed companies are required to have one woman director on the board. I wish this happened on its own, but it's not. If it's not happening, then let's find ways to make it happen. So it's the way, I just say do what it takes, motivate, incentivize. If nothing else, then just let regulation say it.
Right. Revati, what has been your takeaway or this, or a leadership lesson that you will take away from this entire crisis that we've all gone through? Revati, I suppose you're on mute too.
If they decide that they want to come out and work, there have to be enough and more. An ecosystem will have to be created, not just at work, but also within their families, that they are able to come out and work. If somebody is going to say that I have to eat my food at 10 in the morning and her job starts at 9 in the morning, how is she going to do it? It is not going to be possible. So there has to be an ecosystem which can be built even in the place in her living, in where she's living. So the families need to be mentored to say that if she comes out to work, she will be carrying back money, which may become a better lifestyle for you or the children. So there's a lot of things that we need to build also from our side. It's not just that they are, not wanting to come out. They want to come out. They really want to come out, but because there are these restrictions, they are not able to come out. So I think there's a lot of things that at least we as a company, we need to do things with their families, and we do a lot of engagement with the families, because we have a skilling program where we engage them for more than 45 days with us. So they are with us for 45 days. So, and I personally, at least in Mumbai, I personally visit every single home to make sure that I actually see where they live, what they do. So this is what I do with them. And I'm sure that, as they see more and more girls prospering, as they see more and more economic improvement in their own homes, they become brand ambassadors for their areas, and they actually, the other people start emulating them, and they want to pick up these jobs with us. So we're trying our best to get more and more women into the workforce. I mean, it will be a ultimate pleasure for us to see this, not the skyline like alliance, but maybe the ground line like alliance, to say that, there are girls who are coming and doing your deliveries that you order on e-com. You'll see lots and lots and lots of girls coming and doing that, and it's already there, but we need to see more.
Right. Great. I think this was a fantastic conversation, super, super insightful. And thank you all so much once again for taking out the time this evening. And again, very happy Women's Day to all of you. And let's hope to see more women leaders in the future, a lot more like you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye.